So for the first part of our drum song, we're going to be in place on stage, and we'll talk later about how to walk in very gracefully and get into your spot quickly and not having to fidget around trying to find it. So we'll make sure that's all laid out. But you're going to be already in your spot. You're going to have your arms kind of a little bit behind the hips and down kind of strongly. Our posture is good belly dance posture with being lifted and tucked and having strength in those arms. So they're just a little bit behind on the first beat. They're going to come up and out beside of us. And there's a sequence of 3 hip bumps. We're going to bump hard to the right and really shift the weight there. Hard to the left and shift the weight, and back to the right. And so we're listening for those dooms to bump on, because there's going to be some other patterns in the beats, but we're listening for those really hard downbeat dooms. Then we're going to take a little casual walk with a shoulder shimmy. So we want to get our shoulder shimmy going, just pushing each shoulder forward and back, alternating at a pretty fast speed. And you're going to take your own personal walk counterclockwise. Now I say casual because I don't necessarily want to see everybody exactly on the same beat. Just kind of like we're drifting around, we're kind of greeting each other. You could give a little smile to dancers that you pass. You could give a little look to the audience as you're going. You're just kind of taking a casual little walk around. Since we ended up on the right though, my natural tendency is going to be to start with my left foot. And as we go around, it's really 2 8 counts in the music, but if you were just kind of stepping on every other, you might kind of think of it as like 8 steps that you're going to make, and that last one you want to just kind of get yourself ready, so you don't necessarily want to still be going when we get to the end where you're about to switch to the next part. So listen to that part of the music, walk around your own self, see how it feels to you, where you feel like you need to stop, and kind of get yourself prepped so that you don't feel rushed going into the next part. And to prep for the next part, it's going to be hip drops. So we're going to have our left arm up, our right arm out, and our right hip is bent. The weight's not on that leg, the weight is on the left leg, but the left leg is a little bit soft as it's holding the weight. So we're going to be hip dropping on this right hip. We're going to do that kind where we drop and release. So remember, every single time, the hip is doing the same thing. It's just that every other time, that foot is just releasing outward. So it's drop, release, drop, release, drop, release. And then we could think of our 7, 8 is turning to the other side. Now this is going to have a little bit of a fancier turn though. Instead of just step, step, we are going to bring our hands overhead and clap 3 times. So that means we're really seeing the 7 and 8. So we just finished up on 6 here, 7 and 8. And we're ready to go on the other side. Drop, release, drop, release, drop, release, 7 and 8. So we're taking 3 claps to turn. And we're going to be doing that with our right hip, our left hip, our right hip, and then back to the left hip. So when we've clapped from the left hip, we're still going to go ahead and turn a little bit more to the left diagonal, even though we're not about to go into another hip drop, because we're going to start moving in that direction. So rather than coming back to center as we do a lot of times when we finish something up, we are going to go ahead and do exactly as we did before, as if we're about to do a hip drop. But we're just not going to do another hip drop on this side after the second time that we've already done it. So what we're going to do over here, we're going to move ourselves all the way around in our own personal circle, doing a basic step. Some people call it a rocking step, where we step forward on the right, we pick up the left, we put the left down, we step back on the right, pick up the left, step down on the left, forward on the right. So the only thing that the left is doing is picking up and setting down. The right is going forward and back, forward and back. So that's why we can call it like a rocking step. It's kind of like we're rocking forward and we're rocking back, and that left step is just kind of the middle part there. As we're going forward and back, we're going to let our arms show which foot is forward each time. So our arms are just swaying across. The left one is more forward, the right one is more forward, left is more forward, right is more forward, and so on. Now, the other thing we're going to add to it is either a shimmy walk to it, if you can do that, and if not, at least a little hip bump at the front and the back so that it gives it that shimmy appearance. So if I'm walking with the shimmy, I've got a lot of action going on there. If I bump it, I still pretty much have that because so much bounce of the coins. So I'm bumping right, bumping right, bumping right, bumping right. It doesn't look all that different than the shimmy. Ideally, I would like for you to be able to do the walking shimmy, but starting out with the bump would be a perfect substitute for that. The other thing that we're doing, as if we get one more layer to this, is that we're going to turn with it. So remember I said we were going to start on this side? That's because we're going to go to our left wall, our back wall, our right wall, and then end up forward. So as I was going forward and back with the right, and this left was picking up, when it would sit down, it would just be turned a quarter of a turn to get me to the other direction. And I wanted to end forward so that I'm good in center. Now technically we would end on our back foot, but what we're going to do at the very end of that sequence is just think about, don't go all the way with your weight on it so much, because you want to end center. And center will be where we start the next part. So it's kind of like the in-betweenness between part one and part two. Technically you're ending there, but we want to go ahead and think of coming back center, because the first thing we're going to do in the next part is step down on that right and bump it out. So it's good to go ahead and have it in mind so that you are ready for it and you're not still stuck back here in part one and everybody else is moving forward in part two and you don't know how your feet need to get there. So that's part one. Have a look at it from the front and the back with the music. Practice at home, and that is your homework for this week.